students think of earthworms as used in fishing and know they are found in the soil. They probably do not know that earthworms do not have eyes or ears, but that they are sensitive to heat, light, and touch. Earthworms have a mouth in which they take in decaying matter found in the soil. Earthworms take in air through their skin, which may help to explain why they are often found wriggling on the sidewalk after a hard rain. In Activity 6, students observe earthworms' behaviors and features, measure them, and learn about the different parts of their bodies. This activity will take approximately 45 minutes. The vocabulary introduced in this activity is bristles, clitellum, and earthworm. From the kit, you will need, for each pair of students, a magnifier and a plastic tray. For the class, you will need 5 large plastic cups, 2 spray bottles, and the earthworm transparency. You will need the earthworms from the living materials shipment. In addition, you will also need 12 by 18 centimeter sheet of black paper, dead leaves, centimeter rulers, local soil, spring water, paper towels, and the pitcher with tap water. You will also need to make copies of Activity Sheet 6. To prepare for this activity, dampen a paper towel for each pair of students. Fill 1 large plastic cup with local soil and 1 large plastic cup with tap water. The activity begins by writing the word earthworm on the board. Ask students what they know about earthworms. Tell them they will be observing these animals and adding them to their terrariums. Hand out a copy of Activity Sheet 6 to each student along with a tray, a ruler, and a magnifier for each team of 2. Place 1 earthworm on each tray and model how to measure the earthworms. Okay, Johanna, we have an earthworm on our tray. On the side, we also see we have some markings that are also in centimeters, so if we could really get him to line up, but if not, we've also got our ruler, our centimeter ruler that we can use to measure. Let's get him when he gets the longest. So maybe if I hold it up like this, and then when he stretches out to make his next move.
Well,
okay. Well, then now he's stationary. So let's get that.
Okay. Well, I would say that at his shortest point, it would be about 11 centimeters.
And I like the way you said about, because that's almost what we're going to have to do is say about. So let's record that so we don't forget that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's look at some of his other body parts too. How can we tell the front end from the back end of our earthworm?
It appears that the head may be at this end because if you'll notice, it stretches out and then the body, the end of the earthworm is retracted and then it will stretch the front. So I would say this is the front and this is the end.
Okay, and we see this movement going on. We see that there's all of these little segments in the worm. And on the other side of the worm, we have these little bristles. They're really hard to see with a magnifier, but if you pick it up and just feel those little bristles, they're little hair-like structures. And why do you think those would be important to help an earthworm move?
So they're on the underside. Oh, I do feel them. Just almost kind of like a gritty texture. Well, I would imagine that as the earthworm is moving through the soil, that the bristles help to grip the earthworm's position, and it stretches and contracts, and the bristles help the earthworm to not be pulled out or not to go backward.
Do you think there's any other significant body parts that we need to look at on the earthworm?
I notice this band right here. What is that and what's that for?
Well, that band is called a clitellum, and it's actually used as a reproductive organ for the earthworm. Earthworms are neither male nor female, and so that's their way to reproduce. Make sure that the students draw and label their technical drawings with all the body parts that we've just talked about. And you might have the transparency that you showed to make sure that they have those correct body parts. So, Johanna, do you think that our earthworm prefers light or dark?
I would predict right now that it would probably prefer dark because they are in soil. But they don't have eyes. We haven't seen any eyes, so I'm not really sure. What would you suggest?
Well, that sounds like a prediction. You sound like you have prior knowledge with that, so how do you think we could find out if they prefer light or dark? Maybe we could put dark in one side of the tray and see where it goes. So let's put that on there and let's just watch.
Okay. I noticed that the earthworm was kind of really in the middle of the tray, so it could go one way or the other.
Exactly. Keep it fair. You know, if it prefers the light, it can be out here. If it prefers the dark, it can crawl under there.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of slow moving. Do you see anything happening?
Yeah, I see what we identified as the lead end of the earthworm kind of taking off toward that dark part. Look at that. It's amazing that they can't see. Maybe that's something about their body that helps them detect light.
I think you're right. I think it's preferring the dark. We'll give him a few more minutes and then we'll let him go under. But while we're doing that, we're also going to want to see how they respond to water. So what could we do to see how they respond to water?
Well, we're going to have some water and maybe put it close to it and see if it goes toward it or away from it, because it might do that. It might move away.
They like moisture, don't they? Because, you know, they're in the moist soil, so they might like to be in water, you think?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can try and find out. If you'll hand that water over, and let's take a look at our earthworm. Looks like he's mostly under.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we could go on and kind of put down that he prefers dark?
I think that it looks like that from here.
With the class, though, we probably would want to take results from the rest of the room to see what their earthworms are doing, to see if the majority of them prefer light or dark, and maybe even make a tally chart on the board to collect some data to just get more than one trial.
And perhaps more time.
Exactly, and definitely more time. Okay, well, let's try the water. Let's pour a little puddle of water close to it. In fact, let's put it close to its head. What do you think?
And then make
see.
A difference?
Let's do a little bit closer since he's all the way over there. Let's put it right here.
But you know, Kathy, if they prefer water, when it rains a lot, I see a lot of earthworms out on the concrete or up away. Maybe they might respond to water.
Well, actually, they breathe through their skin. So that might be why you're seeing a lot of earthworms on the soil, because if they are put down in water, it's actually like drowning. But our earthworm is really kind of stuck there, isn't he?
But you know, as an earthworm moves, it's got to have some moisture from somewhere, because it will leave like a slime trail. So that's basically moisture. Not much of a response.
No, not much of a response here. Well, when we get ready to add our earthworms to the terrarium, what do you think will happen? Where do you think they'll go?
Well, it's from what I've seen about earthworms, they probably will try to burrow down into the soil. That seems to be a natural habitat for them. I don't know how long that will take, but I think it would be interesting to see if they actually do burrow in the soil and what role they have in habitat.
Would you mind handing over the other soil and the earthworms, and let's just take a look at these while we're watching this one with the water, and let's just put a little pile of soil down right here and see what happens, and see what these earthworms prefer. So let's just pour a little pile of soil next to them and see if they prefer going into the soil. Let's do a little bit more. Good. So Johanna, can you see that one? Looks like he's going into the soil, doesn't he?
How interesting. He just kind of burrowing with this end into the soil.
So what do you think will happen if we put him in the terrarium?
I think that probably it will go start burrowing in the dirt And I think that it's important that the students make note of where the earthworm is when it's put in, and then watch the changes as they occur.
Before we do that, before we put this one back in this terrarium, let's look at the one that we put in the water. What do we see happening here?
Gone away.
Yeah, he moved away from the water.
From the water completely, I would say.
Then we want to make sure that we go back and have the students go back and record observations that might happen over a period of time. We might have to give some time elapse with the earthworms to be able to kind of see that happening.
I think that also, because the earthworm seems to be sensitive to light, it'll be interesting if we put it in so that at least part of the body is not under the leaf. Maybe it might find darkness underneath that leaf.
Well, let's be really careful too when we lift this top off that we don't lose our anole. So I'm going to lift it, and you're going to pick that earthworm up and put him in there.
Put both of them
Sure,
in?
Let's put both in and see what happens.
Oh man, they're both really active, aren't they?
They are. You know, I guess when you're putting them in a new surrounding, they have to have a little bit of sense of where they are and what's going on, and then...
That whole surrounding has their thing, which is soil.
Look at this one. He's got his head, he's trying to burrow down in. Tell the students that they will continue to observe the earthworms and other inhabitants in the terrariums for the next few weeks. Because earthworms like it moist and cool, be sure that the students moisten the leaves thoroughly with the spray bottles each time the students spray the terrariums with spring water for the crickets and the anoles. They should moisten the leaves as well. Wash and dry the plastic cups and trays and return them to the kit along with the magnifiers and the transparency. Have students return the terrariums to their place in the classroom and store the spray bottles nearby. Read and review with the students the Delta Science Reader pages 4 through 6.